Welcome to a decisions training video over design patterns. In this video, we're going to talk about what a design pattern is and how you might want to use it when you're building with design patterns in your projects. Design patterns are a really neat option that you can use when you want to set up something that you're going to be using over and over and over again, hence the word pattern. If you're thinking about building a process that has maybe 15 flows and all 15 flows are going to have the same expected inputs and outputs, design patterns are a really useful tool that allow you to set this up once and not have to reset these up multiple times over and over again. What most people think about when they're thinking about building flows and decisions is when you go inside your flow, you have this set up input data option. And when you click on this, this brings the option to set up the possible inputs that you want to be able to use in your process, right? Say that I want to have a string available as an input here in order to use that in my process for wherever that string might be coming from. So most people kind of get used to using that option up here at the top when it says set up input data, and it jumps right into this. In older the days of decisions, before the most recent versions, this actually used to give you two options: the ability to use a design pattern or the ability to define your input data like you do normally when you click on this. Well, now this, if you do not have any design patterns, it will create one, or it will create the define data option right here immediately. But if you do have a design pattern, then you get the option to use it. And so we're going to set up a design pattern here just to show you how exactly that works. So whenever you want any of these folders that you create within decisions, when you have a folder, there is a design pattern option. It is among the list of all the options you have. So if you have them all available inside a folder, you can create flows, rules, and everything, and create design patterns is one of those options. I have a folder that I set up designed for it just to make one design folder or design pattern here. So I'm going to click on create design pattern. I'm just going to call this design pattern demo. I'm going to hit create. And what this is going to do is it's going to create this editor here where I get to choose my input data. I can set up all of my inputs, the types, and if they're lists or not, and things like that. And I will also get to choose my outputs so that I can decide what the outputs are going to be. So the idea here is I have some general structure that I know I want to use for a large set of flows to say I want all of these flows to take in these values and to output a different value. All right, so I might say I want this to be able to take in a few strings. And on output of this, I want it to output a case entity that I created. So then I can grab some case entity that I have and maybe have this output case, right? So the idea that I'm saying here is all of my flows that I'm going to build with this design pattern are expected to be able to take in these three strings, do whatever logic each of those flows is going to do to them, and then output this case entity. So then I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now you'll see I have this design pattern created. From here, what I can do, there's a couple options that I have. I first of all can right up at the top create something with that design pattern set up for it. So you'll see if I hit this drop down, I can create flows with it, rules, truth tables, forms, anything like that. So I can create a few designer elements right within the same folder that this design pattern is in with that specific design pattern if I'd like. So I can just jump immediately to creating a flow with that design pattern, and then it'll just jump right into that flow building process. Right here, it makes me name the flow. It says it's going to have the design pattern, and then I create it. The other option you have is to just create a regular flow or a regular rule wherever you want to create it in, right? So I create a new flow, I can pull it from it in here, or create a new rule or anything like that. I can do this as well. So I'm going to actually jump right back into that new flow that I had open earlier. And now you'll see if I click on setup input data, I'm given these two options. I can use the define input data like I did before, which just lets me define that data automatically for me right there. But if I want to, I can now also use a design pattern. So Decisions recognizes that I have a design pattern built in this project. I can now use this to create something. So I'm going to click on that. You'll see a list of all of your design patterns in here that are available. If you click on one, you'll jump right into it. If you clicked on the wrong one, maybe you have multiple, you can choose a different pattern. It'll just go back to that list. But then you click on it, and it does show you the inputs that are expected in that design pattern. You can also even just jump right into the design pattern editor here if you not want to go in and make changes or just check what that information is if you need to. But the idea, it'll show you right there. You click OK once you are ready. And now you'll see it gives you the given inputs from this design pattern, right? I can view them if I need to view them. I can jump into the design pattern to edit them. Now, I can't just build this here, but I can if I want. I actually want maybe this particular flow has the same 3 input strings, but I want to add something else. This is going to remove my design pattern. So, if you want the design pattern, you have to use the set items that you placed on it. If you don't want to use the design pattern, then you just remove it or build another flow with define input data set up instead of a design pattern. So just keep that in mind. I can't have a half design pattern that I use in multiple flows. You do have to either use all of the design pattern or no design pattern. But once we have that, now we just can simply build our logic. You will also notice that in addition to the 3 string inputs that it provided that I can now use if I want to, run some data, maybe these strings are emails and I need to use this to set up where the emails are coming from or going to, right? I can easily map that. You'll see I have my strings available in my mapping from here. And then on the end step, you'll notice I do have my output. So I set this to output this case entity. And so I can actually use this case entity now as the output. So I'm maybe completing logic to change what these strings are or adjust them, and I'm maybe saving the case entity, and then I want to output this case entity to use it later, something like that. Then I might build data and make sure that I'm passing some strings and numbers and the information into this case entity to then be used later on in other flows or in other parts of my process, right? But the idea with the design pattern is it gives me this ability to just create something immediately, right? So now instead of having to create, let's say 15 flows, and then I have to create a new flow, we'll just create a new flow 2, right? Instead of going through this process and saying create new flow 2, set up define input data, string A, string B, and string C, all strings, and then going to the end step and adding a new output here, output case, find your case entity, pick it, set it as the output, and then now I've got my inputs and outputs set up with this flow, right? That took me a couple minutes to kind of think about or put together, and I have to do that 15 times. Whereas instead, if I just want this to be built using my design pattern, because it's going to have those same exact inputs and outputs, I just create the flow, click on use design pattern, click on my design pattern, boom. Now I have the inputs ready, the output ready, and all I need to do is work on the logic. So the design patterns are a very powerful way to be able to prepare and set up the way that you want to build something. So if your project is going to use multiple items over and over again, then you can see that. So here is a good example that we can use to show how a project might use a design pattern. So this is one of our accelerators that you can find at marketplace.decisions.com. It's called the Revision Automated Testing project. In this particular project, what we have here is a number of flows that you can use to test your data, to test certain flows that you've built in your projects and see kind of how the data is working. And there's 2 types of flows that get used in this process that are about placing your built flows inside them to test them and see how they work. And so we actually have 2 folders within this that are demonstrated as input flows. So these are flows that are gathering the data that you need to use. And then there's wrapper flows, which is flows that are actually testing the data. And you can see in each of these, they have a design pattern. The idea is every single time we want to make a brand new flow, we want that new flow to have all the same inputs to be able to take in the data to build it. So we have a design pattern here that is able to take an input. This is simply just the JSON serialized input, but also a set of expected outputs that get used in the process. So that serialized JSON, as well as a couple other fields that you might want to use in the process throughout this testing. And so now every single item that you build and create will have that same JSON serialized input setup as well as the outputs set up. So when I build a brand new one, then I have those exact pieces. And the same applies for the input flows. It's the same thing. It has some kind of input. In this case, there's no input, but the key here is that it does have the same output every time. So every flow that you build within this with this type of design pattern will have the same expected output. And this actually allows you to generate brand new flows automatically. So you can actually use a flow to create new flows for you without having to go up here and click on creating a flow yourself. And it creates those flows with those design patterns, and the flows are ready to run automatically. So it's a great way to build this so that you do not have to pre-set up or set up those inputs every single time. You are able to just generate brand new flows every time you run this and create something. So then you can create a process like this that can take in your data and have the same exact inputs and outputs every single time. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of how you can use design patterns, give you an idea of how to build them, what you might be able to create with them, and give you some more ways to further speed up your processes in your building and making more efficient flows.
If you liked this video, please click that subscribe button below to be in the loop about new features and updates and decisions. Thank you for watching.